The Kansas City Chiefs 53-man roster is fresh and new, and we are here to talk about the offense in this video. I'll be back tomorrow to talk about the defense, and I will be back later tonight with a video on Peyton Hendershot. It is very difficult for me to get that name right. I have said Henderson, I have typed Henderson, I have searched Henderson so many times now that I don't think I am ever going to get that very unique last name correct. However, we are here today with a video that will, I think, shed some light on some of the abilities this team has to make the year much, much better than was the offense last year. So, if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about. Consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more. And if you want to help me out, hitting the like button really does so because it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. Now, at quarterback, the Kansas City Chiefs kept two guys. Not a big surprise. Patrick Mahomes and Carson Wentz. They will be in that order. Unlikely Carson Wentz plays much, barring injury, or the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs have locked up a playoff spot. That has been traditionally where the backup quarterback in Kansas City gets a lot of his work. Here's where things are going to get interesting from an analysis standpoint. You see a name here. That is the person on the depth chart. Isaiah Pacheco is the starting running back. In parentheses, what I have done is I have put the name of the corresponding player in last year's offense, followed by the snap count last year, and then their stats. So last year, Isaiah Pacheco was the starting running back. He played 568 snaps. He had 205 carries, 935 yards, 7 touchdowns. The number 2 running back by snap count last year was Jerick McKinnon. This year, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is there on the depth chart. Last year, Jerick McKinnon had 264 snaps, 21 carries, 60 yards, and a touchdown. So that is how these numbers are set up. Hopefully, I did not make that too confusing, but it is just to get a sort of sense of what we're looking at when we talk about some of these positions. And once we get to tight end, it's going to be very clear why it's so confusing that Brett Veach has tried so hard to get a 4th tight end this season. And guys, he hasn't stopped, right? He traded for a 4th tight end just yesterday. So we'll get to that then, though. At the running back position, kind of what we have to do is zoom out and assume the fullback amongst these numbers. There are only 2 running backs on the roster. There is a fullback on the roster in Carson Steele. I just really want the home opener, the first play of the game. The Chiefs are in the I formation, and it's a fullback dive. That's all I want. The rest of the season, any play can be called at any moment, and it will not bother me. But last season, Isaiah Pacheco had 568 snaps, 205 carries, 935 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That seems to be about on par. That seemed to be a responsible season for Isaiah Pacheco. I never really felt that he was overutilized or underutilized. Here's where it gets interesting. Last year, as we talked about a little bit earlier, Jerick McKinnon had 264 snaps, 21 carries, 60 yards, and a touchdown. That would be a disappointing season for Clyde Edwards-Helaire this year. Do we imagine that Clyde Edwards-Helaire has more, at least, carries than 21, more yards than 60, and more touchdowns than 1? Yards and carries, I would say so. And the depth chart here is that I've got from last season is by snap count. So you will see Carson Steele rated against the 3rd running back, which was actually the 2nd running back by stats. Carson Steele, Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year played 227 snaps, 40 snaps fewer than Jerick McKinnon. He had 70 carries last year, 223 yards, and a touchdown. Likely, in my opinion, That is sort of the season that we get again from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Maybe. But Clyde has been so absent this entire preseason that, guys, if you watched the videos leading up to yesterday, I really wasn't sold on the fact that he was making the roster. The Kansas City Chiefs seem to be of the opinion that you've heard the phrase from baseball, availability is your best ability. Andy Reid doesn't go that far. Availability is your second best ability after not fumbling. That seems to be Andy Reid's order of processes in that department. But somewhere in this midst of three players, there were a couple more players that played last year. Keontae Ingram and Deneric Prince. Deneric Prince didn't play any offensive snaps. Keontae Ingram, I think, 60 some odd snaps, something like that. But anyway, between these three guys, you are going to see almost all of the running back action, barring injury. I don't know how good I feel about that proposition. I would look for the Kansas City Chiefs to add a more established name to their practice squad than Deneric Prince. Keontae Ingrams of the world, those kind of guys who have had a few seasons where they've done a couple things in the NFL, because CEH is such a mystery to this point. And Carson Steele, look, I feel every bit as strongly as you feel about Carson Steele being able to make an impact for this season, but we've seen Clyde miss time. We've seen Pacheco miss some time, and Carson Steele, we don't know if he will miss time or not. But we have to have a fourth name at some point, probably. Now, moving on to the wide receivers, this is where it gets super interesting. I have Hollywood Brown pinned in as the number one wide receiver on this team. His injury situation muddies that water a little bit, but comparing him to the number one wide receiver by snap count for the Kansas City Chiefs last season, Rashee Rice played 622 snaps. He had 79 receptions, 938 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Is this something that we believe is within the realm of possibility for Hollywood Brown this season? If Hollywood Brown misses 1, 2, maybe 3 games, 1,000%, I think these numbers are realistic for Hollywood Brown this year. Moving past that, so yes, I think that this is going to be a push or a win for this season. I think Hollywood Brown is going to have at least this type of impact on the Chiefs. That's just what I think. So this is where it gets absolutely wild. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year. You remember that, right? Yeah. Offense didn't do too well, right? Okay. The number 2 wide receiver in last year's offense by snap count was Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I believe this season the number 2 wide receiver will be Rashee Rice. Last season, Marquez Valdes-Scantling had 21 receptions, 315 yards, and a touchdown. Now, if we're looking at this year by snap count, because of the injury, Rashee Rice might absolutely be the number 1. But to either way, you are comparing either Hollywood Brown or Rashee Rice to 21 receptions, 315 yards, and a touchdown. And I understand this is where it gets to be very easy to point the finger at this process and say, but Marquez Valdes-Scantling was not the second most productive wide receiver on the team last year. No. He just should have been, because he was on the field the second most. He was not anywhere near the second most productive wide receiver last year. In fact, he was near the bottom if you're looking at productivity per snap count. But he still got 618 snaps. I think Rashee Rice is good for more than 21 receptions, 315 yards, and a touchdown this year. Guys, it just gets more wild. So Xavier Worthy, I think, is the number 3 target on this team. I think he will be number 3 probably by snap count. Last year, that was Justin Watson, 536 snaps. I could see Xavier Worthy playing more than that. 27 receptions, 460 yards, and 3 touchdowns. You know what? That is probably on the bottom end of what would be reasonable for Xavier Worthy in his rookie season. Is Xavier Worthy able to get a Rashee Rice rookie season like 79 receptions, 938 yards, and 7 touchdowns? I think it's possible. I would probably peg him in his rookie year for a 600-yard, 400 to 600-yard guy, right? He's going to make an impact, but he's not going to have all of the ins and outs of the game. This seems reasonable. Then, I would say right now, I think Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be your number 4 wide receiver. Last year, by snap count, that was Sky Moore. Sky Moore played 495 snaps last year for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he had 21 receptions. Sky Moore, for as much guff as we give him, in 495 snaps, over 100 fewer snaps, 130-ish fewer snaps, had the same amount of receptions as Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Now, he had many fewer yards, 244 compared to the 315 from MVS, but he had the same amount of touchdowns. Do you think Juju Smith-Schuster can come into this offense this season and provide at least 21 receptions, 244 yards, and a touchdown were he to play 500 snaps? Certainly I do. Juju Smith-Schuster had 260 yards last year for the New England Patriots when everyone kind of just assumed Juju Smith-Schuster had retired. Juju Smith-Schuster, in his off years, and he's had many of them, is more capable than Sky Moore was last year. Now, here's the wild part. When you start to look at it, Hollywood Brown is a 1,000-yard receiver. He can be. Absolutely he can be. Rashee Rice would have had 1,000 yards last year, in my opinion, had they ran him out there in that Week 18 game. Xavier Worthy, maybe not a 1,000-yard guy yet, but he's got that potential. Juju Smith-Schuster had 933 yards, I think, during his season with the Kansas City Chiefs. Justin Watson last year had 460 yards. Your 5th wide receiver in this season was a 460-yard guy last year. So, Justin Watson, number 5. Last season, the number 5 player was Kadarius Toney by snap count with 230 snaps. He had 27 receptions, 169 yards, and a touchdown. Justin Watson is good for much more than that. Justin Watson is good for much more than that. Now, when you look at this, wide receivers 1 through 4, Hollywood Brown was not here last year. Rashee Rice was the team's leading receiver last year. Xavier Worthy was not here last year. Juju Smith-Schuster was the team's leading receiver 2 years ago. That's a lot of fresh blood for a wide receiver core that was aching this past season. Okay, so looking at this, Justin Watson compared to Kadarius Toney. I think Justin Watson is going to have more luck, even with just 230 snaps, than Kadarius Toney. Sky Moore, in my opinion, is the number. I think he's the number 6 or 7 guy. It depends on what you think about Mecole Hardman. Every 5 minutes I switch thinking Mecole Hardman's going to be the number 6 guy. Mecole Hardman might be the number 5 guy. It just depends. I don't know. Anyway, Sky Moore compared to Richie James last season. Richie James played 137 snaps. He had 10 receptions, 14 yards, 0 touchdowns. That might be what happens to Sky Moore this year. This might be the first place on the roster that everything sort of Sky Moore with limited attempts might give you even more limited results. Mecole Hardman then becomes your number 7 guy, comparing to Justin Ross from last season. Justin Ross played 136 snaps last year, 6 receptions, 53 yards, no touchdowns. Guys, Mecole Hardman's a 500-yard receiver. Mecole Hardman can 1,000% do that for the Kansas City Chiefs. This wide receiver core, very quietly, absolutely stacked. Very quietly, absolutely stacked. Moving on to tight ends. Travis Kelce last year was the number 1 tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. I imagine he will be this year as well. Last year, he played 775 snaps, by far the fewest he has played in a long time in Kansas City. He had 93 receptions, 984 yards, and 5 touchdowns. If that's what he does again this year, I think everybody is gold for that, right? I don't think we want to see Travis Kelce being pushed out there for 900, 1,000 snaps again. I don't think we want to push him over 1,000 yards just to say we got him there. He's already broken the streak. Don't push luck. Father Time is undefeated. That would be fine. In my opinion, Jared Wiley will assume the number 2 spot from Noah Gray. Last year, Noah Gray played 592 snaps, 28 receptions, 305 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This becomes a point of contention for me. Just because he is the number 2 tight end on the roster, I don't think that's going to be an undisputed number 2 as it was for Noah Gray last year. I think that Jared Wiley is likely to play in the 400 snap count range this season, and that will, instead of Noah Gray playing Blake Bell's 251 snaps, he'll get 351, he'll get 400, somewhere in there. But 28 receptions, 305 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I'm very high on Jared Wiley. I think that is absolutely doable. So then you're comparing Noah Gray to Blake Bell last season. Blake Bell played 251 snaps. He had 5 receptions, 26 yards, and a touchdown. Do you think Noah Gray can do that? 100,000% he can. 100,000% he can give you 5 catches. So this offense gets very deeper at tight end. And here's the thing. Brett Veach has tried so hard to find a number 4 tight end this offseason. Irv Smith, Baylor Cupp, Jaquarius Spivey, brought in all these guys for the 4th tight end position. Okay, that's what you want to do, Brett, I get it, I guess. But why? Last season, the number 4 tight end on the roster was Matt Bushman, who played 7 snaps, accruing 0 stats. Now, Peyton Hendershot strikes me as someone much more talented than Matt Bushman. He has had a decent backup tight end career in the NFL for the 2 seasons that he's been around. I'm going to get into that a little bit more tonight in the video I make about the Peyton Hendershot trade. Very interesting prospect, Peyton Hendershot. So, top to bottom, 1 through 4, this is, in my opinion, a pretty talented class of tight ends. Noah Gray has proven himself at the NFL level for several seasons now. Jared Wiley is very talented. Jared Wiley hasn't proven anything, but I think he's going to. Now, getting into the offensive line. Instead of doing what I did with the other players, the other positions, what I've done is compared them to who started at that position last year. Kingsley Suamataia was last year Donovan Smith, who played 749 snaps. Donovan Smith had an injury, so, is Kingsley Suamataia going to be able to get through an entire season starting at left tackle in the NFL? It's yet to be seen, but he has shown definitive levels of athleticism to this point. Joe Thuney, that left guard position. Last season, he played 1,097 snaps. So, as I stutter here, all of your offensive linemen besides the injured Donovan Smith played 1,000 plus snaps last season. I stand by my contention. That is a mistake. You hope to not have to do that. You hope to have some rotation for your offensive linemen, especially as you get late into the year, especially as you are playing multiple postseason games. So, Joe Thuney, 1,097 snaps last year. You hope not to have him for 1,097 this year. Creed Humphrey, 1,092 snaps, same deal. Trey Smith, 1,086 snaps, same deal. Jawan Taylor at right tackle, 1,076 snaps, same deal. Your swing tackle last season was Wanya Morris, 339 snaps. You kind of hope he doesn't have to play that much this year if he is your swing tackle. If he assumes a starting position from someone else, that's a different story. That means that your offensive line is better than you thought it is right now. Mike Caliendo last season was Nick Allegretti. Nick Allegretti played 79 snaps. It would be great to see this number over 150. Hunter Nourzad last year was Mike Caliendo, played 64 snaps. It would be great to see this number in the 150s. CJ Hansen last year was Lucas Niang. Now that's not exact because it's a tackle. It's the closest I could associate. 58 snaps. You'd like to see him get a little bit of tread on the tires in his rookie season. And then finally, the Kansas City Chiefs kept Ethan Driscoll, UDFA. Now, here's the thing. Guys, this team, Carson Steele, UDFA. Ethan Driscoll, UDFA. Chris Roland Wallace. I said just yesterday the day before, I don't know whose 53 he's going to be on, but it's going to be somebody's. I didn't see the math working out in Kansas City, but it did. The Kansas City Chiefs, favored to win a third consecutive Super Bowl, have 3 UDFAs, undrafted rookie free agents this year, on their roster. Now we'll get into Chris Roland Wallace tomorrow, but Ethan Driscoll compares to Prince Tega Winoho last year, 16 reps. If all of these backups can play just a little bit more than they did last season, it is going to go a long way toward. So this offseason, we saw Chris Jones not participate a whole lot in the preseason. He's getting older. Bones are aching. You would hate to see that for your offensive linemen as well. Your offensive linemen are starting every game for you. So you hope that these backups this year get a little bit more play than they did last year if there is some type of rotation to be had, if there are a couple games as opposed to the one game at the end of the season that does not have to be won. Those would go a long way in saving your offensive linemen for a deep playoff run. Do you want to see these linemen end up retiring early? That's the question, in my opinion. Anyway, that is the offense as it has been kept by the Kansas City Chiefs. I will be back tonight with a video on Hendershot, the Hendershot trade. I will be back tomorrow with a rundown of the 24 men on defense for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I might have a bonus video tomorrow too. If you like what I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about, dropping multiple videos a week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.